everyone, and welcome back to my channel, True Crime and Trials. And here I like to watch trials and report back. This one I'm doing now is from years ago. Some I do live and watch every day and report back, just in case you haven't had time to watch it or you don't want to sit through the whole rigmarole. Just want to hear notes and basically what's happened that day. So that's what I do here. So we're now moving on with the Casey Anthony trial and the next defence witness, and that is Cindy Anthony. So Byers starts off by asking Cindy if she remembers an incident years back involving Lee going into Casey's room at night. Cindy says no. I don't like this line of questioning. I think it's horrible. I don't believe Lee did anything. And at any time Lee's on the stand, you can just see the pain in his eyes. It's just horrible. So up until 6 months ago, Cindy believed Kaylee was still alive, even though they had held a memorial for her in February of 2009 and had her cremated. I can't comment on that. I've never experienced that, so I don't know the process or how people feel or how it can affect people. It does sound bizarre that even though, you know, the body's been found and cremated and, you know, they've done all the things that they would do for a deceased family member, but not accepting her death years after, I don't know. So on the 14th of August 2008, Cindy visited Casey in jail, and it was said that Cindy had viewed a recording of George blowing up at the media. The reason being, apparently, that George had been asked about Kaylee possibly dying by accident. Cindy was telling Casey this because she was telling her that this was what the media were running with at the present time. Casey told her that she was aware that George had blown up at the media, but this had only just recently happened, so I don't know. So that was that for Cindy. Now we move on to George. So in George's statement, he had said he had smelled decomp in the woods before, which he says meant when he was in law enforcement in Ohio. George had walked the perimeter of the fence on Suburban Drive during the investigation. He says he didn't go into the woods. George says he did this because a member of law enforcement, Sergeant Allen, had gone to his house with a stuffed animal and asked George if it came from their house. George then asked him where he had found it, and Sergeant Allen told him at the end of the street. So obviously George went to go have a look around himself. George says he walked every street he could in Orlando, specifically the streets in his neighbourhood. Sometimes he said he did this to clear his head and sometimes to search and ask about Kaylee. George is continuously asked if, on the night of 15th of July 2008, when Yuri Melich arrived back with Casey, he took Yuri to one side and said to him something has happened to Kaylee and Casey is lying. George in George fashion doesn't like to give yes or no answers, so he goes round the houses giving 5-minute long explanations. He just talks around it basically and never gives a yes or no answer, which frustrates Byers because he just wants him to ask the question, but George gives a round the house answer. So after that, we move along and the questioning about the smell of the decomp in the car, which George says he undeniably says that is what he smelled. He's also asked about saying Casey lives on the edge, which he says he possibly could have said that, and he again says that Casey does live that way. And also in a statement given on the 24th of July, George states that Casey will take things as far as she can. So then Byers points out throughout this whole statement, George said nothing but negative things about Casey, which he did, from what we've heard anyway. So George says he was just cooperating with law enforcement, and he he just wanted to get answers about his granddaughter. The next day, George went to visit Casey, and obviously he didn't say anything to her about what he'd said in the interview he'd had the previous day. He says he was just trying to keep her upbeat. And then, bizarrely, Bayer says that George was basically undercover. Bit far-fetched. On the 5th of August 2009, George gave a deposition. And in this deposition, George was asked about the smell he smelled being decomposition. And George replied in this statement that it wasn't human decomposition. He knew there was decomposition there, it just didn't smell right to him. So he was saying decomposition, but not human decomposition. It just smelt that way. So this line of questioning is then halted by the prosecution, and they are wanting Byers to read prior questioning to put this answer into context, which he does, but in all honesty, it doesn't negate away from the fact that George had stated he hadn't smelled human decomp from the car. So now George is doing his usual explaining away why he said things at certain points in this investigation. And, in doing this, in my opinion, he just makes himself look terrible on the stand. I mean, I know these depositions and statements were taken years ago, so it's hard to know what you said back then, but in instances like this, your answers have got to remain consistent. Otherwise, things like this will happen. So he's now saying, he definitely says it was human decomp he smelled in Casey's car, and he's sticking by that answer today, even though it's just been proved that he said he smelt decomp, but it wasn't human decomp. In January 2009, George attempted to commit suicide and even left a suicide note in which he expressed some guilt. George was then hospitalised shortly after, and shortly after being released, he was back again appearing in the media advocating for Casey. So I have the suicide note here, which I'm going to read, and it says, "Cynthia Marie, as you get this letter, this should be no surprise that I have decided to leave the earth because I need to be with Kayla Marie. I cannot keep on going because it should be me that is gone from this earth, not her. I have lived many years. I am satisfied with my decision because I have never been the man you, Lee, Casey, and especially Kayla Marie deserved. I have never been the man any of you could count on. I have always let each of you down in more ways than I could remember. I do not feel sorry for myself. I am just sorry I burden all of you the way I have. My loss of life is meaningless. I cannot be strong anymore. Kayla Marie, our granddaughter, I miss her. I miss her so much. I know you do too. You were always the one that provided for her. What did I provide? I blame myself for her being gone. You know, for months, as a matter of fact, for a year or so, I brought this up, only to be told not to be negative. I sit here falling apart, because I should have done more. She was so close to home. Why was she there? Who placed her there? Why is she gone? Why? For months, you and I, especially you, always questioned why. I want this to go away for Casey. What happened? Why could she not come to us? Especially you. Why not Lee? Who is involved with this stuff for Kaylee? I am going crazy because I want to go after these people Casey hung with prior to Kaylee being gone. That is why I got the gun. I wanted to scare these people, you know? They know more than they have stated. You cannot sugarcoat, kid glove these people. They need hard knocks to get info from. Sure, that will not bring Kayla Marie back, but was Casey threatened? You know, Casey does not deserve to be where she is. I miss her. I miss her so much. I am worried for her. Her personal safety is always on my mind. I cannot function knowing our granddaughter is gone. Kayla Marie never had a chance to grow. I have taken what meds was given to me with alcohol, and I am ready to give up. As I can tell by my writing and thinking, I am getting very stupid. Wow, what a word, stupid. Yes, I am. Again, I do not feel sorry for myself, but yes, I am stupid. Cannot deal with this stuff anymore. The loss of Kayla Marie, the loss of Casey, the loss of us. Cynthia Marie, the meds, I am ready. Saying goodbye, please understand it is for the best. I do not deserve life anymore. Any more us. You know I never got to say goodbye. I am at this place and all is getting fuzzy and my writing is all over the place. I love you, I love you. I hope you get to see Casey soon. All the people we met, wow, the writing is getting weird. I love you, I am sorry. I will take care of Kaylee once I get to God. I am so tired. At least I shaved today. Wow, I am tripping out. I am sorry. I love you, Cynthia Marie. Kaylee, here I come. So, Byers now states that all George's media appearance stopped when the abuse claims came out, and George replies was that these claims came out through Byers. And again, George denies the claims of abuse, even though Byers says he would never admit it. So now we move on to the gas can. And when it went missing, he reported it as stolen along with the other one. George says that the only time he had ever reported them missing, that was the only time he had ever reported them missing, because he knew on previous occasions that Casey had been using them. I don't get that. What, they've obviously gone missing in the past. He knew Casey was doing it, so why report them this time? He says he doesn't remember if the gas can he gave law enforcement in August had duct tape on it or not, but he says it's law enforcement that took it and he didn't touch it. So on the 5th of August 2009 is when George did a deposition. George was asked about the gas can and George said there was no duct tape on the can, but on the photograph there is duct tape on it. He says that when he and Casey had the argument about the gas cans, there was no duct tape on it. Now he says that maybe he put some tape on it after this incident and before law enforcement took it into evidence. George said in his deposition that when he received the gas can back, it had duct tape on it and that he hadn't put duct tape on there. Will we ever know the mystery of this duct tape? So on to the cross-examination. Mr. Ashton is pointing out that when George gave his deposition in August 2009, Kaylee was missing and could possibly have been harmed by someone other than his daughter. So when he was giving that deposition, he was in an emotional state. Fair enough. When he was interviewed by law enforcement on the 24th of July 2008, George didn't think at the time that Casey had hurt Kaylee. When he learned that Kaylee's remains had been found, he felt a deep hurt inside and a breakdown inside, and he'd obviously held hope that she would be found alive. August 2008, George had bought a gun. The purpose of this, which we heard in the suicide note, was because he wanted to get answers from people who he believed were withholding information on his granddaughter. So he was going to threaten them to try and get information out of them. I can understand the rage and the frustration and everything, but law enforcement found out from someone that George had the gun. They came to his house and advised him of a violation of a court order where he couldn't have a firearm in the home as Casey was out at the time. She was living there. So law enforcement confiscated the gun, and so that meant George never had a chance to use it, which I'm glad, because George running around with a gun. 22nd of January 2009, George travelled to a hotel in Daytona Beach to commit suicide. He says he doesn't know why he chose that particular day. He says it just felt like the right day to be with Kaylee. George had made phone calls to his family to say goodbye for the last time. George wrote a suicide note after he took pills and drank alcohol. He wrote the note to Cindy, as we heard. He says in the note he had to express how he was feeling and to tell Cindy why he would be dead when she found him. If it wasn't for the intervention of law enforcement, George wouldn't be here today. So the redirect. When Casey was released from prison and placed under house arrest, someone from the Department of Corrections came to their house to explain all the rules and regulations. They were also given a list of what could and couldn't be done in the house, so George knew damn well he couldn't have a firearm in the house. And if that did happen, Casey could go straight back to jail. So when they found out about George's gun, they were close to taking Casey back to jail, and prior to that, George had never had a gun. So George had thought beer would, when he tried to commit suicide and taking blood pressure pills, he bought, not thought. But George says he had a few different medications, and this attempt at suicide was after the 2 search warrants were carried out in December. George was asked for fingerprints, which he didn't want to give, and he actually had to be subpoenaed to do it, which is very strange. I mean, if I was in that position, I'd give them everything. On the day George attempted suicide, one of the people he called was Byers. Why? Well, I say why. He was defending Casey, I guess. So, you know, he probably would have been one of the people that he called. But it's always interesting when Cindy and George get up on the stand. You know, you like I've said before, you learn more about the family dynamic and what's going on and what happened. So yeah, I'll be back with more in a new video. So until then, bye for now.